Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. It's Susan Kaufman. I'm here for Attitude Magazine's weekly ADHD Experts broadcast. This week is the latest in our series of ADHD adult superstar guest speakers. And we're so pleased today to welcome Bucky Buckman, who's a new speaker on ADHD Experts, to talk about the link between ADHD and entrepreneurship. Many of the world's top entrepreneurs have ADHD. In addition to that, though, countless CEOs and business executives are successfully leading their companies to innovation, to growth, and also living with attention deficit disorder. So what is it about the ADHD brain that seems to align so well with entrepreneurship? And how do leaders who are successful turn their ADHD traits into business advantages? It's a fascinating topic and one that we're really excited to have Ken Buckman talk about today. Some of the things he's going to address are why ADHD people may have a leg up on their neurotypical fellow business leaders, why individuals with ADHD thrive in business atmosphere, pretty much controlled chaos, a decision a minute, and why people with ADHD are skilled at managing risk. Before he starts speaking, let me give you a quick introduction. Ken Bucky Buckman is the founder and CEO of Trade Tech, which is a full-service exhibit, event, and environment studio offering lots of innovative products to thousands of clients. He is also the founder and CEO of Rainey Investments. It's a real estate investment company with over $40 million in investments. Trade Tech is a 3-time winner of the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America. And maybe even better, a 2-time winner of Best Places to Work in Illinois. Ken is also involved in many nonprofit boards, including, let me just point to one, he's the board chairman of the pediatric cancer charity, Cal's Angels. So welcome, Ken. We're so really pleased to have you and grateful that you'll spend this hour with us today. Before Ken starts, I want to just offer a special thank you to the sponsor of today's webinar, Inventive Labs. Our sponsors make it possible for Attitude to offer free webinars to literally tens and tens of thousands of people in our community every year. And so we're really grateful. This sponsor this week is, as I said, Inventive Labs, and they offer interesting and innovative programs to help adults with learning differences identify and turn their passions into a livelihood. Whether you're just starting out or mid-career, one of the Inventive Labs 3 programs can be right for you. The 3 programs are the Entrepreneurship Program, the Gap Year Program, and a pitch competition for cognitively diverse teams. Inventive Labs also helps new startups with angel funding and has an embedded business incubator. So if you're an entrepreneur with ADHD, contact Inventive Labs now to learn more. They are at www.inventivelabs.org. Thank you again, Inventive Labs. And for that quick introduction, let me turn it over to Ken Bucky Buckman with our thanks again.
Well, thank you very much, Susan. I'm going to go over kind of some housekeeping at the beginning here and some goals that I have with us today in the short time that we're going to be together, and what I think this webinar should be and what it should not be. So, I'm real concerned that I say the right things in the right way. This is not a one-size-fits-all for the audience that's there. Everyone's got unique situations, unique personality traits, unique family issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm assuming that my audience today is made up of 3 groups, and I'm going to try to address all 3. One is clearly the adults that have been struggling with this all their lives and are already out in the professional world or trying to accomplish some sort of entrepreneurial goals. Others are teens or younger adults that may be tuning in or listening that have aspirations and have been kind of marginalized in a lot of different ways and just don't know what to do with their unique skills. And then the third group is parents who have kids that fit in the ADHD category. Obviously I can't identify with any of you parents because I'm the kid. But I can certainly talk to what a lot of others have expressed as frustration and really what their role in this whole scenario is. So a couple things. What today is it's about general encouragement for so many that have allowed society's message on ADHD to become your reality. I like to say quite often, nobody puts baby in the corner. Back from that Dirty Dancing movie. Unfortunately, that's what society has done to all of us and to the general stigma of ADHD for a generation here. And luckily, that's starting to change. But I know that's a lot of the audience. What today is not is about suggesting that just because you have ADHD, you're automatically an entrepreneur and you should triple mortgage your house and take every risk on the planet. That is not what the message is today, and I want to be very careful of that. But I do want to point out, as we talk through, that even if you're not entrepreneurially ready to take a leap, that there are quite a few careers and career paths out there that you may not have thought of that should hopefully by the end of this paint a little brighter light, that you ought to recognize that your quote disabilities are actually massive advantages in a lot of jobs, a lot of careers. So it's not strictly about entrepreneurship here. Today is about recognizing and embracing the advantages that come with ADHD, and that frankly the quote normal people out there don't have. If you are a normal person, and listening in on this, I don't want to. Unfortunately, this is not for you. This webinar is not for you. It's going to almost sound like I'm bragging for us ADHDers. It's a specific purpose of this webinar, so don't take it the wrong way. If you're a normal person, this is not for you. You're welcome to listen in and recognize us as uniquely skilled in certain areas of life, and hopefully it's taken in that context. Today is not about being able to do a super deep dive. Again, the one size fits all isn't going to happen in the next 45 to 55 minutes here. I'm not going to get into the drug debate of whether you should be drugged, not drugged. I'll tell my personal story here in a bit, but I'm not going to debate whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. And I don't have all the answers, and I don't claim to have all the answers. So when people follow up with me afterwards and have very specific information saying, Bucky, you said this, but I'm not that. That's okay. I recognize that, and please view me talking to you in the right context, that I'm not claiming to have all the answers. I have some unique perspective that has built up over a fair amount of experience and an awful lot of communication with others that have ADHD, and I'm strictly sharing that in the hopes that it encourages you. Finally, today is about starting a super important conversation that can have a profound impact on society. It's already been said, and it's common knowledge that some of the best entrepreneurs in the world are clearly ADHD. They don't need to be diagnosed. You watch them on a CNBC news broadcast, and you can tell in 10 seconds. My prayer is that you take it after today much further than a 45 to 60-minute seminar. You read up on it more. You join panels. You join groups. You seek out others, and I'll talk about that as we move forward here for practical advice. But I don't want it to stop today with the people that are listening and watching after the fact, because society really is waking up and recognizing entrepreneurship in a way that they never did. When I grew up, I never had that luxury that is out there now. But B, that learning disabilities are in fact advantages out there, and starting to set up ways that we ADHDers can take advantage of that out there. So I will make one disclaimer because this is live. I've grown up in the trade show industry 27 years. That means I'm on show floors all over the country with unions and predominantly blue collar work. I don't have Tourette syndrome, but I may drop a profanity here and there. You've been warned. I apologize to the sponsors and to everyone involved. It's just who I am. It might come out, it might not. I'm going to try to try to keep it under control. But there's the disclaimer. So, okay, let's get into this here. So the screen that's up in sharp contrast to the one that Susan read with all the words on it, this is your classic ADHD biography right here. And so just a couple quick things about me. I'm going to go clockwise on the pictures here. For upper left is the start point. I am the father of triplet 15-and-a-half-year-old girls. Yes, God must be taking revenge on me for something in my youth. But three beautiful 15-and-a-half-year-olds that will be with driver's licenses soon. And I have a 14-year-old son who is now as tall as me and wearing larger shoes than I am. So pretty active family here, pretty close age group together, which makes life and sports and activities and kind of a controlled chaos environment at home just as much as the norm at work. Middle picture, that's obviously I'm a really good salesperson. I've convinced an absolutely beautiful woman to be my bride for 20 years. We just celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary in Germany and Switzerland last week. And that's Heidi. And we've been together for actually 23 years, but married for 20. Upper right-hand corner, that's something I run marathons. I started doing that 4 years ago, predominantly to lose weight, but also I've always had some form of exercise as an outlet for my ADHD. So, that picture's there both to say a little bit about me and all of you out there, that if you aren't embracing something that is causing you to get out there and exercise, for a fair amount of time, that really does help my mind. And the majority of people that I talk to, that's a key ingredient of keeping their mind somewhat placated out there and somewhat calm on a day-to-day basis. Moving down to the bottom row, that's one of my companies, Trade Tech. That's the trade show company and my longest company. And that's just showing that I love business, and that's what this whole webinar is about. And fortunately, what was really challenging growing up with me turned out to be what really allows me to tick, per se, day by day. Since I already identified my son there, the middle one is beer. I throw that in there just because I absolutely love beer. Everywhere we go in the world, and everything in meetings and new businesses seem to always revolve around beer with me. I don't know if that's because I may use beer as in place of some ADHD drugs, or if I just really like it. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's for clinical reasons, and that's why I need beer on a regular basis. But the next picture is just showing. That was one of the pictures from last week when we were in Switzerland. My wife and I love to travel all over the world and adventure travel and anything that involves unique escapades out there. And then the last one is just showing the logo of Cal's Angels. Susan brought that up as charity. I'll be talking a little bit about charities and community involvement. That happens to be my strong passion, childhood cancer. I got a lot of connections through family and friends, and particularly passionate about it just because it's a cause that I think that we can see the solution in the end, if not in my generation, for sure my children's generation, and that makes it worth it to spend quite a bit of time with it. So I'm going to try the next slide. Do I have? Yes, I do. All right, so Susan kind of went over this already. I already went off script. First disclaimer, I already did my disclaimer and my goals for you. We're going to go over entrepreneurial advantages, controlled chaos, risk management, serial entrepreneurship, community charity advantages, and practical advice. By the way, I hate PowerPoint, so it was really weird for me to it's weird to talk to a screen instead of an audience, and it's even weirder for me to talk to a screen and read a PowerPoint. I like to free speak, so I'm going to keep going on and off of it. But one thing I want to point out here, and this is your first interesting entrepreneurial ADHD story. Whenever I listen to webinars or to any kind of a speaker, they never say how they got there. How did you get invited to be a speaker? Where did you come from? And so I felt it worthy to tell you the story because it's ADHD related. I'm in this business, it's called a peer-to-peer board of directors group. It's called Vistage out there. It's a well-known international organization where typically 18 to 20 company owners get together once a month and solve all the world's problems or avoid all the world's disasters in short version. And I've got a fantastic group, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute with some other stories. But anyway, I came in about a year ago to one of our monthly meetings, and one of the other members, who happens to be clearly ADHD, owns a real estate company that is certainly tied to my real estate company, does about $500 million a year in transactions here locally. he came in and brought me this article. And just kind of threw it on the table right before we have speakers that come in for 3 hours of an 8-hour day. A professional speaker comes in, and then we go over our individual issues. So this was just before the speaker, and he dropped this article in front of me from the New York Times, announcing this author who was looking for ADHD entrepreneurs to interview for a new book. And he dropped it in front of me. He said, this is totally you, Bucky. You should do this. But he was joking. So the speaker started talking, and he was just like anybody. And hopefully you haven't done this with me. But in the first 30 or 45 seconds, you decide whether that speaker is worth your time or boring as ever, and you don't want to listen to the whole presentation. This guy was the latter, and I quickly tuned him out. And so what I did instead is I emailed the author from the article in the New York Times article. And sure enough, within 10 minutes, as the guy's still speaking and I'm not listening to him, the author emailed me back. And long story short, I ended up being interviewed for it. And 9 months later, the book was published. And it is showing up on your screen right there, the ADHD Advantage, which pretty directly ties with today's seminar. I said my hope is you take it a lot further than this seminar. Here's a super easy first step. It's all over. I think it's in audiobooks. I think it's in different languages now. It's hardcover, softcover, real easy to get your hands on. And this does take a much deeper dive into the connections between ADHD, entrepreneurship, other careers out there. It does touch on the medicine, no medicine. It goes much deeper. So I would encourage you, just from this slide, to think about picking up this book and taking it a little bit further. So anyway, by being in this book, that's where this website, Attitude, ADDitude, I still laugh every time I say that. That's how they got in touch with me. I did an article with them, just a quick little interview for a magazine that is apparently sent out to about 50,000 people a month. And that caused the request for me to come in to be on the webinar today. So now you've finally heard a story of how somebody actually ended up on a webinar. And I find it totally ADHD funny because I did it while I was supposed to be listening to a professional speaker in my group. So brief bio, and I don't want to spend too much time on the specifics of my businesses, other than I've been at this for quite a while. My trade show company just turned 18 years old last week. So 20-year anniversary, wedding anniversary, and 18 years company-wide, which means my wife has pretty much put up with me being an entrepreneur the bulk of our marriage together. And that this trade shows and events, Trade Tech, that's the main company. You couldn't script a better industry for an ADHD type person. Murphy's Law was literally written on the trade show floor. If anyone doesn't know what a trade show is, you've probably been to an auto show at least. I am everything other than the cars there. But everything goes wrong on a trade show floor. And you've typically got, 8, 10 different trades. They're all lined up. And if one person doesn't do what they're supposed to, the other 9 can't do what they're supposed to. And stuff happens that you couldn't possibly imagine. And you're constantly reacting to chaos. I could write an encyclopedia times 10 of stuff that I've experienced in my career in the trade show industry. From a booth spontaneously igniting, catching fire in the middle of setup, to somebody else's booth falling on ours in the middle of the setup right before the show started. I could spin tales for days. So anyway, it was a natural. I didn't know when I joined it that it was going to be a natural for my personality traits, but it certainly was, and that's been my longest time company. And that's still not only operating, but having its best year ever. Interesting to note is I don't deal with the day-to-day anymore, and that's going to come up here in a little bit of kind of where an ADHDer is strongly excelling in a company's growth and where they may want to think about kind of removing themselves. So I'm strictly involved on a board level and a strategic level. And again, the company's doing better than it's ever done in history. Real estate started in 2011. It ended up being a ironic side shoot of a disaster that occurred in the trade show company involving the recession that I'll touch on in a few minutes, and has grown substantially. That's also been in the Inc. 5000 two times, 2016 and 2017. It reached number 594, I think, in 2016, and last year or this year it dropped, which means really last year, I think to about 715 or 720, something like that. But it's basically a whole bunch of townhomes that we bought and rehabbed and targeted foreclosure victim families that were, they had rebuilt their lives and had secure jobs, but they just had a foreclosure on their financial records, so nobody would touch them. I coveted them and was able to charge a lot higher rents and kind of really build a business model that helped people and turned a profit, which was really, really nice. And then that led into buying commercial buildings and getting tenants there, and now getting into land, a couple hundred acres of land and some development. So it's been a real fun process to keep learning as somebody who's never been involved with real estate, and that's really the bulk of my day-to-day work. And then finally, the solar end, because what the heck does solar have to do with trade shows or real estate? The solar is a work in progress. I haven't made any money on it whatsoever. In fact, I'm losing money on a monthly basis right now, but it essentially was born out of the trade show company was looking at taking on some outside investment, and there was going to be a large tax event, and I was looking for a way to not pay the government those taxes and get credits instead. And solar was the number one way, and so got into it that way. And there's a whole bunch of new laws in Illinois that just went into effect this year that are literally being written right now. That from the success of the real estate company and the trade show company decided to take kind of a casino flyer and a calculated gamble and have a several $1 million bet on what is currently the largest roof-mounted solar project in the state of Illinois that will test these new laws. And I will literally find out in the next several months whether I'm brilliant or whether I'm an absolute moron. And right now it's 50-50 in the air, because the results are not crystal clear when you're waiting for government policy and legislature to determine whether your business model works or not. So that's my brief entrepreneurship biography there. So a little bit about my ADHD background. Because I was born in 1970, so I'm 47 years old. And when I was young, growing up, there was no such thing as ADHD. I was labeled as special. They certainly had learning disabilities, but they didn't call it ADHD. So before I get into this, I ironically saw my parents over the weekend. We saw one of my daughters co-star in a high school play, and I was telling my mother that I was going to be doing this webinar today. And she said, well, remind the audience that your father and I thought you were going to be in jail by the time you were 20. She made a point of telling me that so that you knew that I was a problem child growing up. And that's why it says up here, I spent a lot of time in back room. In my high school, they had a movie called The Breakfast Club. I think that was about 25 years ago. My high school had something called the back room, the Behavioral Adjustment Center, where you had to sit in a desk all day, and you got 2 bathroom breaks for the entire day when you did something wrong elsewhere in school. And I had a lot of those in the back room, and luckily I made friends with the guy who ran the wood shop in my high school, and he rode his bike to school every day. And I worked in a bicycle shop, so I used to get passes out of back room and go fix his bike so that I could just go move around, and I'd do it for free. So that was my creative answer to the back room. Okay, drugs. I was on drugs until I was 13. I took Dexedrine, which is medical grade speed if you're not familiar with it. My parents tried me on Ritalin. I turned into a zombie. Dexedrine seemed to work for me. They took me off of it at 13. I've never been on it since. I do drink today, and I've had doctors tell me the next 2 are again in lieu of going back on drugs, because a lot of doctors are telling adults now they need to go back on drugs like they were on as kids. I personally don't agree that for just myself. I'm terrified that it would take away the real me and what allows me to function day to day in business. But I currently drink about 15 to 20 cups of coffee a day just to calm myself. As you hear my voice amp up just in this presentation, I've got a pot of coffee right in front of me. I'm drinking from a cup in between. You hear me take a breath. When I have long meetings, management board or leadership meetings with my companies, the staff will literally make sure that we have a bio break and Bucky gets his coffee if it's more than an hour, hour and a half, because I start becoming more hyperactive, not less. It's ironic. It's an opposite effect. And beer, back to beer. I have two, 3 beers almost every day. At the end of the day, it has a calming effect with me. I like to again say I love beer, and that's the only reason I drink it. But I do think that there is some credibility to the people that have told me that I may be substituting coffee and beer, for the use of more drugs. But that's my brief ADHD background. So let's get into some of the advantages here. Think of some of the current business titans out there. Again, like I brought up before, we'll bring up current companies here: Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Elon Musk, Tesla. Both those guys. I'll just leave it with those two. Both those guys. I don't know either of them in any way, shape, or form. But they run main businesses, and then they build spaceships. Both of them, by the way. Most people don't realize that Amazon also has a space company called Blue Origin. And obviously Tesla's got SpaceX. So, to be able to do two completely diverse, and if you've ever heard either of these guys get interviewed out there, again, you identify with their traits instantly. So I'm not going to spend much more time on talking about the titans, but just pay notice when you see people interviewed in business. Pick up and identify and acknowledge that more than not are pretty ADHD traded, dysfunctional, etc. And guess what? Business at its core is dysfunctional. There's no such thing as running a small company, starting a small company, building a business without nonstop dysfunction. And that is a core entrepreneurial trait that we've been labeled and literally are dysfunctional since birth. So when we already have that background, it puts us at a little bit of an advantage right off the bat. One other suggestion: if you don't already watch that show, Shark Tank, watch the show and watch. Not only do you get a lot of great ideas that come in, but take note of the personalities that you see and hear in the average small entrepreneur that's coming in. It'll reinforce over and over and over that these traits are out there. That business to business board group, Vistage, that I'm in, and we've got a really, really powerful group that between us represents several billions of dollars a year in sales and several thousand employees. And if I look at the 18 in my group, I did this with somebody else the other day, that I believe that we are about 50 to 60% of our group, if we diagnosed across the board, would be diagnosed as ADHD. Again, I claim that that's not by accident. So embrace that. ADHD energy. We're like the Energizer bunnies in general. And you've got an unending supply of energy. That is absolutely needed in any kind of an entrepreneurship or business environment. There's everyone around you is constantly looking to draw from you and your energy and your ability to influence and excite people around you with whatever you're selling or pushing, etc. Resilience. If you're going to build a business in any way, shape, or form, you're going to go through all kinds of roadblocks. You're going to have people telling you no at every corner. You're going to go through severe setbacks. Where common sense would tell the average person, just stop, you're not going to succeed. That's not what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur pushes through and continues to readjust and come up with new ways to do something, to retry, etc. We ADHDers, this is built in for us. We're familiar with failure. We've been told we're failures in many angles of our lives. Since we were really young. So it doesn't bother us so much, and that's great, because when you go to these large business schools, and ironically, just last night with 2 other entrepreneur mentors and friends, I spoke at the University of Chicago MBA booth program on entrepreneurship last night. It was a panel of 3 of us talking about our businesses in general Q&A with the students. And it was all revolving around failure, that they are going to school to learn how to fail in a comfortable environment, and paying a lot of money to do it at an elite school. Recognize that we've got a strength, that we've gone through this already, that we've grown up failing. So we kind of get to skip a step in one sense and go into something understanding what failure feels like. Confidence. I don't know why, but at least when I'm speaking about myself, my traits, my mind is moving so fast from thing to thing. Maybe I'm not analyzing it enough. Maybe I'm not doing the right amount of due diligence out there, but I find that I'm able to get really confident in an action, in a purchase, in an initiative with minimal information, and to convey it to all around me quickly. In a small company environment, that is critical. It's better to do something than to shoot for perfection at all times, as anybody will tell you that's been in business for a while. And that's why a lot of companies really stall or fail. So that is a trait that's there. Hyper focus. This is one that people really and that's not in my slide, by the way. Hyper focus is one I think that is severely overlooked, that us ADHDers, people don't understand that we in general have this trait. Normally our minds are all over the place. And that is a plus in a lot of ways. But when we need to, once in a while and for limited time periods, we can focus every bit of our brains on one item. It's almost like a horse with those blinders out in front of their eyes, to be able to hyper focus and address something with all of your energy. And when you got all your energy going on one item, when your mind is used to working on 10 or 15 items at once, the effects are pretty profound. So don't underestimate the hyper focus. Lead comfortably in times of crisis. It goes right back to confidence. I guarantee you, in any kind of an entrepreneurial environment, you're going to have crisis after crisis after crisis. That's part of running a small business. Our traits fit right in with that. I put down here kindergarten. You can have a business degree from the best MBA school out there. You can have no degree whatsoever, but anyone running a business should be given a psychology degree, because more of what you do is not the theories and math and product that you're working with. It's dealing with people. I don't care if you're technology. I don't care if you're a service. I don't care if you're a manufacturer. You are dealing with people. People are the essence of every single company, no matter what size and no matter what they do. The last night's panel that I was on, one guy built a medical supply business from up to $100 million and sold it to McKesson. And another guy runs a prominent law firm that he started, and also was the chairman of the board and CEO of the United States Tennis Association, which is the United States Open, which is the largest single sporting event in the United States that happens every year. So both of them talked in different ways of how people were the absolute critical component, and being able to manage people, which is a whole bunch of diverse personalities hitting you all at once throughout the day, that everyone's got different needs and different feelings and different issues and et cetera, et cetera. Who better to be at the head of that than an ADHDer that can process all these like ping pong balls being thrown at them all day, every day? Recognize that for what it is. I'm seeing on my clock here, I'm at 33 minutes. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit here, maybe skip a couple things, but trying to pace it here so that I'm not talking too fast. Next slide is boom, control chaos. I've kind of talked about that a little bit. So what we'll do here is talk about other careers. Because if you're not somebody that is comfortable with an extreme amount of risk, which is what an entrepreneur is, if some of what you've seen or heard from me or others about entrepreneurship scares you to the point that you're saying, you know what, that's not me. I just want to come back and say that's okay. That's perfectly okay. But I'd love you to take a look at a lot of other careers out there and look at them through a different lens than you've been looking at them before, and recognize that the traits and dysfunctions of your personality actually fit these careers in a completely perfect way, much more so that if you think about these careers and identify friends or family that are in any of these, I'm willing to bet that you would also identify them with some sort of learning disability, if not outright ADHD. So think about your EMT, your ambulance, your emergency medical technician, or a trauma center. I've got a good friend that runs a trauma center here in Chicago, and it was news to me that most hospitals that you go to, the emergency room, that all the staff that works on you in that emergency room are not actually part of that hospital. They're contracted as an entrepreneurial organization that gets put in to an individual trauma center. And so not only does the entrepreneur ADHD person perfect to run that, but think about what a trauma center is constant chaos and reacting to something new. And we've all seen other TV shows to know that we would fit perfectly in that. Real estate development. It's kind of ironic that I fell into that, and that story's for not for today. But if you think about real estate development, talk about resilience and dealing with failure and everyone telling you no and going to a town hall meeting. Think of all the newspapers that you read about any new development coming up in your town or your city. People always oppose it, and they have to redo their drawings 100 different times and get yelled and screamed at by the community town hall meetings. They're blasted in the press. You picture it, and it's happened. But eventually, a beautiful new development or transformation occurs in your area, and somebody had to persevere through that. I'm willing to bet again that somebody or groups of somebody are ADHD type people because they've got these skills in the background. On trade shows, I said I was perfect. Murphy's Law. Advertising, same sort of thing. They're constantly having to think on the fly, come up with completely new information, and quite often do it, in the middle of a campaign or on the fly in front of people, etc. Events, same way. They're real similar to trade shows, like a corporate event. Think about all the Murphy's Law type stuff that applies there. Legal. Why would a lawyer fit with ADHD? That seems so uncharacteristic. Well, I was addicted early on and still watch Law and Order all the time. My kids love to tell their teachers at school when they were young that they were allowed to go to an R-rated movie or do anything because their dad lets them watch Law and Order at home, and they understand the real world. Probably not a great father figure there, but the legal show, the Law and Order, the reason I loved it, and it was the original one with Sam Waterston, is I used to love how the lawyer, how Sam would react in a courtroom and quickly change his pitch and come up with a creative way. That is a mind that is racing through and pulling out bits and pieces and quickly putting them into what sounds like a polished presentation. So, don't discount legal. Same thing with medical docs and nurses. They're constantly having to react to things that happen in real time that they haven't necessarily been versed on, and they've got to deal with a whole bunch of information at once and spit it out. Traders, my same business group, my peer-to-peer group, one of the more successful guys in that group ran one of the largest commodities trading firms in Chicago. And this guy, in our meeting, there's not a meeting that we have that within 10 to 15 minutes of the meeting starting, he's not standing up and pacing around the room because he's so extreme ADHD. And his skill set was to be able to deal with risk management and risk tolerance in trading platforms. And that was his mind constantly working, being able to figure out highs and lows and framing it so that minimal disruption could occur. But that was a mind constantly working. So again, I'm sure I could come up with dozens of other careers. What I'd encourage you to do is just think through as you're looking at careers out there, of whether it would fit with somebody that needs to constantly react and respond to a lot of incoming data that a normal mind would just get completely overwhelmed. And if the answer is yes, you might want to look at it further because you just might thrive in it. I don't have time to tell my detailed 2009 story when I almost lost everything. So I'll tell the 60-second version. That was the recession for me in the trade show business. I dropped 68% bottom line, 40% top line. My business partner since the day I started the company, wanted a buyout because he thought the company wasn't going to survive, and he wanted it all up front because he thought it wasn't going to survive, and that was a couple $1,000,000. The state of Illinois tax revenue department showed up and said I'd been charging sales tax incorrectly for the last 10 years and wanted $482,000 that I didn't have, or they'd shut me down. And my top two sales reps decided to not only quit on me at the time, but form a competing company that they had been secretly working on for months beforehand, and then sue me for my non-compete so they could steal the remaining customers that I had. That all happened at once in 2009. The only reason I tell the story is to two things. One, all entrepreneurs have true disasters that occur at one point or another. That's what makes them entrepreneurs. Two, I almost lost everything in that scenario. Three, it was the one time in my career that I foolishly questioned my ADHD and what I know makes me tick, and I froze. For 4 months straight, I literally, from about April till about July of 2009, I'd wait for my wife to fall asleep. I'd pretend I was asleep, and the second she'd fall asleep, I'd get up and I'd pace all night, trying to figure out answers because I was so focused on worrying about the family and the kids and what was going to happen, and I didn't let my mind function normal. And thankfully, my wife cracked me out of that after 4 months and just looked at me and said, "Stop. Just stop. I know what you're doing, and you need to stop worrying about the family. We're going to be fine. You've got to go back and do what you do." And that kind of unlocked me from it. And literally in a matter of 6 months, we solved the state of Illinois situation. The lawsuit over the non-compete didn't go anywhere, and no clients were lost. I successfully bought out my partner, and sales more than doubled within 18 months. So my only point there is two things. One, you need a rock in your life. In my case, mine, and a cheerleader who understands you and what makes you tick. That could be your parents. That could be teachers. That could be a mentor. You should have mentors of some sense out there. So I highly encourage you to look for them. But you need to have somebody that's backing you out there, and that will always tell you that your disability is not a disability. It is the very essence of who you are, and you got to kick it back in. That literally saved my company and saved our family, because I was frozen solid for the first time in my career. And again, I don't want to give bad advice here, that you should be taking extreme risks out there, or my story should apply to anyone else out there. I'm just making the point that you need people around you that understand what you're doing. I'm at 43 minutes, so I'm going to speed through serial entrepreneurship here. This slide is real simple in the sense that we've already covered the advantages of entrepreneurship and ADHD. The beauty is, once you get a business up and running, your mind is not slowing down. So you start to in your daily lives think about everything you're encountering, everything that you're doing socially, business-wise, with your family, etc. And I find myself anyway, and I would encourage you, as you go through life, just look for things that don't make sense to you. That why do they put that here? Or why does this hurt when I use it? Or, man, it would be so much easier if I could do this. That kind of thinking, because your mind has the capacity to do that and still run your primary business. That's where serial entrepreneurship is born. That's where you see all these people out there that are running multiple businesses. And ironically, what I've become by accident, just because my mind has been freed up to think about day-to-day life, when I'm going through and identify, something that somebody missed. In real estate, it was the foreclosure families that everyone completely disregarded them, even though financially they were fantastic bets, and they would pay a fortune for rent for somebody to give them a second chance, because nobody was willing to rent from that to them at all, and they were living in rat holes while making $75,000, $100,000 a year. It made no sense to me. So I just stepped up and said, well, I'll rent to you, but I'm going to charge you $200 more a month than market rent, and I'm going to require you to sign a two-year lease, so that I don't have to pay some real estate guy 1 month of rent commission every year. And boom, we had a model that took off. Just one example there. Okay. So community charity advantages, really along the same lines of serial entrepreneurship. and I do want to slow down a little bit here. We're probably going to go over in time. I'll be done with the actual webinar part probably in 5 minutes here. But I do want to slow down here from community and charity. Because you have the gift of minds that think so all over the place and can process so much at once consistently, and it's critically important to me anyway that my mind is always filled, that I'm doing stuff so that my mind isn't racing, so that I'm not recognizing that it's racing, because when you fill it with either multiple businesses, multiple family events and activities, or throw in community and charity activities, that's actually your happy place. I found that when everything is going right and I'm not needed in 10 different areas, I get very uncomfortable. And I'm guessing a lot of you do that are listening to this as well. When everything's going wrong, or everyone needs me at once, or the world is ending in 10 different ways and we need answers right now, that's when I find that I go into this calm state where everything becomes clear. That might be that hyper focus that happens, but it is something to acknowledge, that you got to keep your mind full at all times. And community and charity type activities, you got a lot of people that love to participate in community events and charity events, and they get on boards and they get on different committees, etc. But most don't really have the capacity to do that much and still run their lives because they're all volunteers. But I would encourage you to recognize you've got extra energy, you've got extra capacity, and if you combine that with a passion, whether it's something at your kid's school, whether it's something in the community, whether it's a nonprofit that you can get yourself involved with, I'm willing to bet that you can be a doer versus just a check writer. Check writers are great, but somebody needs to do this stuff on a volunteer basis. So I just really encourage you to open up your minds and skill sets to take advantage where your passions lie and recognize you've got the capacity for it. So finally, practical advice. Embrace your diagnosis. Don't hide it. It's not a bad stigma. In fact, it's becoming more and more a good thing out there. If you look at colleges 25 years ago, they didn't even acknowledge there was such a thing as an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurship program. Nowadays, you got junior highs that are creating business competitions, and high schools that are actually funding ideas. When you got that much entrepreneurship energy going on all throughout the country, you should absolutely drop yourself into that environment. And parents with kids, parents that are at wit's end, encourage your kids to get into these classes. That's the farthest thing from their mind, thinking that they should be involved with something business when they can't even get through school in a day without the teacher calling and saying your kid acted up again. Drop them in the business program. Let them experiment with some of this stuff. You just might find out that some really neat results come out of it. Walk around and carry the attitude that you've been given a gift. This is I view it as a gift from God. This is what I was meant to do, and I was equipped with this disability to do it well. And I would encourage the rest of you to think that way too. Next, ignore the haters. There's plenty of haters out there that have diagnosed us, cornered us, etc. And you know what? Even if we didn't have the ADHD, that's part of life, haters, and especially in business. And God help you if you start doing really well, you get more haters that come out. So that's just a life skill, not just ADHD, but really ignore them. Don't accept the status quo for anything. That's what I really encourage you. People always come to me and say, do I need to come up with the next grand idea that's going to be completely disruptive? You see these things on TV, and the chances of you being that next person are probably less than you winning the lottery. So I would just encourage you, maybe you're the next person, hey, hats off to you. But 99.99999% of entrepreneur activities or companies that are started come from, again, somebody just walking through life and saying, that doesn't make sense. Can I make a business out of this? Is this something that needs to be solved? And then fill in the pieces. be realistic. There is no magic wand, and you don't get special access just because you got ADHD. Just acknowledge you got advantages, but you don't get special access. And this is probably one of the most profound things that has helped me over my career and life in general, is every time I meet an entrepreneur, and I don't care what age, I don't care what environment, I don't care what business, just if they're an entrepreneur that started something, I make it a point to ask them to tell me their story. And it's a real simple question. And you'd think that that's something that is asked to entrepreneurs all the time. Let me tell you, almost nobody asks it. And almost everyone is dying to tell you their story. And because we've determined that 50% plus of entrepreneurs out there are more than likely ADHD, if you start getting these stories and getting insights, it's going to be like you're listening to this webinar over and over and over with new insight each and every time. So I don't care what age you are. I don't care if you're an adult, a teenager, parents of kids at wit's end. Encourage everyone to talk to any entrepreneur that you come into contact with. Figure out time to have them tell you their story. That is, and that's, by the way, not in my slide. I wrote it in after, but that's actually one of the most important things from where I sit. And really hand in hand with that is seek mentors again and groups. I've always had mentors around me, and if I look at the mentors, they are certainly ADHD, and it's great again to have that rock, cheerleaders, etc., that know business and know you and know what it's like to have a disability like ADHD. Read the book ADHD Advantage, and one more TV show that I encourage you to watch if you don't already, because I love him, and he's the classic serial entrepreneur, and he's absolutely a textbook ADHDer. It's on CNBC. It's called The Prophet. It's Marcus Lemonis. You've probably seen it. If you haven't, highly encourage you, if you want to be an entrepreneur, just to see the dysfunction go on a week-by-week basis and how somebody deals with all these multiple businesses. I love it, personally. So I'm at 52 minutes. I probably went long. I apologize, but hopefully it was great information.
You did a brilliant job of articulating exactly what it's like to have ADHD and be able to handle millions of things being thrown at you all the time, and why that keeps your brain full and energy. I mean, it was really, really wonderful to hear. Also, I think, mentioning that the other part of that, which is hyperfocus, was inspired too. There are a couple of questions here that I wanted to make sure, we have very little time, but a couple of people have said along these lines, I'm really great at marketing, sales, whatever, but I have a really hard time prioritizing or focusing or looking at the big picture. Someone else put it, how do I keep all the new ideas that are coming into my head out of the way when I'm trying to build a business? So how do you deal with that, tension between handling the day-to-day really brilliantly, it's coming at you, versus stepping back and saying, okay, what's my strategy? What's the plan? That kind of part of it, of business.
Yep. Excellent question, and a real easy answer that goes in line with one size does not fit all. Is the answer to that question is know what you're good at and know what you're not. And what you're not, hire for.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, okay. So another set of questions, and this is going to really, I hate being out of time. People want to know if you saw yourself as a bad kid or a bad student and when you were in school, when did you transition to realizing that you had these strengths, and how did you get there? That's a big transition, right?
Yeah, I was a thoroughly average student, except when I didn't want to be. When I actually cared about something, I could easily excel in it and get a B or an A very quickly. But otherwise, I was perfectly fine being average and in the top 50% of my class. If you can say that with comfort. When did I start to really take advantage or recognize that I had skills and use them? That was certainly as I got into 100% commission sales, which was the first job out of college, and recognizing that I had a lot of unique abilities that allowed me to succeed in that, and I just took it from there.
That's great. I think sales is great for ADHDers, don't you? I mean, it really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Another set of questions, and then we're probably almost out of time. Time management. Do you have any suggestions?
Can we go beyond an hour or no? We can't.
Yeah, sure. Going. We can go on. We can keep on going.
I'm fine to keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Time management. How do you stay focused? Another person says, time is my big enemy. I say yes to too many things. I can't, wish I could just freeze time. Any suggestions for our listeners on time management?
I identify with every one of those statements. And, the presentation for this, I wrote the slides over the weekend because you guys kept asking me for them. But I really wrote the notes for the presentation 30 minutes before I got on this webinar. So I certainly identify to that. My short answer, is real similar to know what you're good at and know what you're not and hire accordingly. At every entrepreneurial move I've had, I recognize I'm kind of a slob. I'm very disorganized. I'm all over the place. I make sure that I've got a rock next to me that is super organized and super detailed and understands time management, and they keep me in line. If it was left to myself, there's no answer. I'd be ruined. So
and
real
these
similar
are people
answer.
In your company, you mean in the company?
Yeah, but
okay.
Like I started the real estate company, and I rapidly things started to spiral out of control on the detail end, and I got somebody that did all the details really well and worked with me, even though it wasn't a full-time employee. So yeah, recognize what you're good at, recognize what you're not, and hire accordingly.
Yeah, that is a huge strength if you can do that correctly, right? I mean, yeah. A couple of people said that they're recently diagnosed adults. And as a result, they're trying to sort of rethink who they are and what they should be doing. That's been a sort of an eye-opener. And they want to know if you have any advice for them as they sort of stand back and say, quote, I just found out I have ADHD 1 year ago at the age of 40. I'm reevaluating my whole life and starting over again. Any suggestions for these folks? Well, I think it's a big aha moment. And many of them were diagnosed when their children were diagnosed. We see that a lot at Attitude, and that's what both of these people mentioned.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting. Keep in mind, I've never been formally diagnosed as ADHD because I deliberately not allowed myself to get in that position. But frankly, with all the good information coming out now, if I listen to my webinar and I read the ADHD advantage to myself as a newly diagnosed person, I'd be pretty flippin' excited. So if you are that person that all of a sudden is worrying. Hopefully this can encourage a little bit, and some of the other references for you to think the opposite. That congratulations, at age 40, you've just been given a new advantage you didn't know you had.
That's true, so true. What do you think about groups where ADHDers get together and talk about what works for them?
Personally, I would never.
You got that right in your business group.
I would never seek that out. Yeah, exactly. I never have deliberately seek that out, and probably never would. But again, because 50% plus of entrepreneurs out there are probably diagnosable as ADHD, you're naturally going to find yourself in those groups. So go back instead to my suggestion is find mentors and find groups like a peer-to-peer type group. They're all over the place out there, and get involved with that. And by default, I'm willing to bet you just joined an ADHD group.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Do you have challenges? This is from Kendra. I love this question. Do you have challenges with impulsivity? And if so, how do you combat it, i.e. spontaneous interest that results in sidetracking and undertake trivial non-priority matters?
That's a loaded question.
Right.
Yeah, of course. The short answer is of course. But is it an impulsivity problem, or is it an entrepreneurial organization that has to react rapidly to minimal information, that decisions are critical to be made without all that information? If you look at it that way, I don't know that it's impulsive versus looked at by others as a calculated risk taker that has the ability to rapid fire make decisions. Again, I would turn that what sounds like a negative question into a pretty powerful positive.
Okay, makes sense. Well, everyone, we're going to have to go. I want to thank Bucky for this incredible experience, and I also want to thank our sponsor, Inventive Labs, which has a number of interesting programs for entrepreneurs. So, Bucky, thanks again. We hope you'll come back another time. It's great to have a positive role model. We really love it. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
For more Attitude Podcast and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.